Hello, and welcome to episode 124 of Levels Plus Whenever. And this is episode 4 of the Switch retrospective, which at the time of me recording this part of the video, the Switch 2's finally been revealed. So I had good timing. This particular episode is going to tell you what I think are the best Switch games on the system. It's a pretty chunky episode, so I don't want to belabor too long, but we do have some pickups to go over real fast. First off, I'm wearing one. I've got the Heather I'd Rather Go to Hell Silent Hill 3 shirt from Fangamer. That was one of my birthday gifts to myself, is trying to get Heather merchandise. It's harder than you think. Fangamer's got the most. But this was the shirt out of the options that they had that I liked the most. It just kind of captures her whole thing. I also have gotten my copies of Develop 4. I say my copies because I'm getting one and then I'm giving out a few. This happens to be one I'm giving to a friend. But it's nice to have the physical versions of these. It turned out really nice. Let me just open to a random page, and hey, look, it's a photo. Alright, and I have two games that have come in, but one came earlier and one's coming later than when I record this intro. So, I got the E's Memoir, The Oath of Felghana, Refined Edition from Exceed and Falcom. So it came with the game itself. I went with the PS5 version. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's got a manual and a reversible cover. Comes with a CD soundtrack, a microfiber cloth, which is like arguably the silliest thing I've ever gotten one of these. It came with some art postcards and a little acrylic stand with Adel and the other characters from the game that I don't know yet because I haven't played this before. I've heard really good things about this particular version of Ys 3, so I am excited to play it at some point. And the other game is Tales of Grace's F Remastered for the PS5. Alright, we're just going to jump right in to the best games on the Switch. And I'm going to do this in two different ways. I'm going to do this very broadly. And then I'm going to do it with exclusives to the system. And what I mean by exclusives, I mean not a port, not a remake, not a remaster. Brand new games brought to the Switch one way or another. So we'll be getting rid of quite a few things on this list. But for now, we'll start with the 25 best games you can get on your Nintendo Switch that are not a Nintendo Switch Online. And you can see that it's quite an interesting mix of titles. We start with Grease, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Elevator Action Returns S Tribute, Metroid Dread, Splatoon 3, Ghost Trick, The Ninja Savior's Return of the Warriors, or The Ninja Warriors once again, Spiritfarer, Portal, Smash Bros. Ultimate, Unicorn Overlord, Untitled Goose Game, Celeste, Neva, Another Code Recollection, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, Metroid Prime Remastered, SteamWorld Heist, Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves, or Garo Mark of the Wolves, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Time Spinner, Super Mario Odyssey, and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. This is pulled pretty directly from my top 110 list, which is loaded with Switch games. And honestly, you can't really go wrong with any of these. I have not played Breath of the Wild on the Switch. I had it on the Wii U, but the Switch version is arguably a little better, at least visually. Unicorn Overlord I played on PS5, but I have heard marvelous things about the Switch version running well. Neva is another one I played on PS5, but I read from Nomada Studio that they developed it with Switch as the primary hardware, so it should be pretty solid on the Switch. And SteamWorld Heist I played on the Wii U, but in Shovel Knight I played on the Wii U and 3DS. But again, I don't think any of those are going to be radically poor on the Switch. But these are the games that I would recommend people pick up just based on my own personal preferences. However, if we were to expand this out, and I think I have it up to like 60, so we'll do 64 slot. Maybe we got more than that. There we go. If we expand this out to go beyond 25, and I actually don't put any remakes, remasters, or anything like that into it, then it becomes a bit of a different ballgame. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I was using when I started creating this list. I did a first video that started with 100 and worked its way down. I don't want to do that. I think that's kind of tedious. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kick out all of the games that originated on other hardware first. So, Breath of the Wild is a Wii U game first. Elevator Action Returns was an arcade game. Ghost Trick was a DS game. Ninja Sabers is a remake of a Super Nintendo game. Portal is a PC game. Another Code Recollection I'm making an exception for because it is very drastically different from its source material. Shovel Knight is 3DS, Wii U, PS3, it's like that era. Metroid Prime is a remaster. SteamWorld Heist did not originate on the Switch, it was on the Wii U. Fatal Fury did not originate. Definitive Edition is not the same as Another Code Recollection. Last Played 2. Okami HD. Mario RPG. Trials of Mana. Trials of Mana, though, is a significant enough remake that I feel comfortable including it because it completely changed the very nature of that game. Lightning Force is a Genesis game. Portal 2 is PC. Legend of Valkyries Arcade. Freedom Planet was on the Wii U. Blaster Master Zero I had on the 3DS first. Glade Lancer was a Genesis game. Well, Mega Drive to be more specific. Mystic Warriors was an arcade game. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a game I'm going to leave because they doubled the tracks and added more characters. If they had left it as they launched it, I would not. Resident Evil Remake Remaster. A GameCube game. Resident Evil 4 GameCube game. Hyrule Warriors, it was originally a Wii U game with 3DS content added. This is a compilation. There's a few compilations. I'm just going to go ahead and throw all those out of here. XCOM 2 were PC games. These is Neo Geo Pocket games. Sam and Max were PC games. Contra, these are all compilations. That was a Neo Geo game, and that was an arcade game. So our top 25 ends at It'll Do Too in terms of just my list. So I think instead of just worrying about these additional extra 5 that aren't on the list, we will just rearrange. And these are now the top 25 Switch games that came out on the Switch. So there's no ports, there's no remasters, they are 2 remakes, and that's it. So with these changes, we now have Grease, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Metroid Dread, Splatoon 3, Spiritfarer, Smash Bros. Ultimate Unicorn Overlord, Untitled Goose Game Celeste, Neba, Another Code Recollection, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Time Spinner, Super Mario Odyssey, Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, Transaruby, Streets of Rage 4, River City Girls 2, Vampire Survivors, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Trials of Mana, SteamWorld Dig 2, A Short Hike, Sonic Mania Plus, and It'll Do 2 as the 25 Switch games that are basically Switch games. There's nothing historic or retro hanging out in here. So let's briefly talk about these particular 25 games, since a good chunk of them were on both lists. We'll start with number 25, and we'll work our way up. And I'll try to keep it to like a couple sentences per game, because I could get really verbose on some of these. It'll Do 2 is a very charming action-adventure game in the mold of overhead Zeldas, with a fantastic protagonist and a cute art style, charming music, and it's just got a lot of surreal humor and goofiness and everything, but it's also just a delight. Sonic Mania Plus is the best Sonic game in years, and in my opinion is the second best behind Sonic CD. Looks fantastic. It's got a great soundtrack by T. Lopes and is just a delight to play, especially with the additional content with Ray and Mighty. A Short Hike is a splendid action-adventure game without really any action in it. You play as Claire, and you are a bird, and you get to fly around this serene national park environment, interact with people, do these little tasks, and try to get to the top of the mountain. And it's just a really rewarding experience to play. SteamWorld Dig 2 is a marvelous sequel to the original Dig, that it takes that concept of digging down and platforming and just explodes the idea out with so much more dimension and depth. It is a marvelous game and one that I highly recommend you check out. And Heist 2 could be on this list in not too far of the future. I'm just waiting for Super Rare to release the physical for it. Trials of Mana is a remake of the Super Famicom Seiken Densetsu 3 and takes the multiplayer approach away for a solo focus and makes it more of a Dreamcast feeling action RPG. And if that doesn't entice you in some way, then I don't really know what would. I really like the setup of Trials of Mana, and I think that it is one of the best games Square Enix has done in the last few years. Super Mario Bros. Wonder brought the wonder back to 2D platforming. It is a splendid, imaginative, and bonkers ride from start to finish. And it's wonderful that you can play as Peach and Daisy and Toadette right out the gate. Lovely game. Just a lot of charm and personality that the Mario series has needed in its 2D outings for a very long time. Vampire Survivors is a dense roguelite with a very good set of DLC for Contra and Castlevania that I highly recommend. But even the base game, once you just kind of start to learn its little nuances, becomes an absolutely wonderful experience of just moving and letting the game do everything else. It sounds so simplistic, but it truly is a masterwork of game design, how fun Vampire Survivors is. River City Girls 2, way forward second attempt with the franchise. is a better attempt. It gets rid of a lot of the kind of economic shaming that the original had. Polishes up the gameplay considerably, adds in more playable characters, and has generally better boss fights, and just has improvements in every regard. It's just a little bit more janky in terms of its exploration. You can get stuck in things. Streets of Rage 4, one of the best beat-em-ups ever made. It is absolutely wonderful. It looks fantastic. Lizard Cube and Guard Crush did a great job refining the gameplay and adding in a lot of nuance into it. It's got a soundtrack full of superstars. It is truly one of the best beat-em-ups, and I highly recommend you play it if you have any interest in the genre. Transaruby is a darling little indie Metroidvania with a character that has a lot of really unique and cool powers. I love the fact that she can turn into a bike, and that's like her dash. It's really neat. It's got great level design, interesting story beats that don't really coalesce into anything too mind-blowing, but it still makes you intrigued to play through it. And it's just really well done all the way around. Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes is the best Warriors game to come out on the Nintendo Switch. It takes the core of Fire Emblem Three Houses and adds a what-if situation. What if another mercenary met up with the cast and changed the fate of everyone? And it's pretty solid. It's got some stories that aren't worth telling, but I think that Shez was a great introduction, great character, and the gameplay is probably the most polished of the Warriors games that came out on Switch, and the most diverse as well. Only Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition tops it in terms of breadth of movesets, and all your favorite characters are back. So it's just a great time. Super Mario Odyssey is the 3D Mario I have been waiting for since Super Mario 64. It is a callback to that more exploratory type of 3D platformer. Instead of being stuck on a very linear path, you get to wander around and accomplish objectives at your leisure. And it is a wonderful, wonderful game that really brought the new status quo for Mario being imaginative to the forefront, which other games, for the most part, would follow afterwards. Time Spinner is another indie Metroidvania that I happen to like a lot. I think that it is a really solid, beautiful game that has a pretty interesting story, great character interactions, but overall, the moment-to-moment combat and versatility in your moves is fantastic. It's got a really good soundtrack, the sprite work is really well done. I really like it. I think it's fantastic. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, a game that fell quite a bit since 2023. When it came out, I was like all over that game. But in the end, I realized that the Ultra Hand really kind of soured a bit of it for me. I didn't really care to make stuff all the time. I would have loved the game if it was just everything that's there, minus having to craft stuff all the time. If I didn't have to craft all the time, I think it'd be higher on the list. But the very clunky interface and the deterioration of your stuff just kind of made it seem pointless to me, and I don't really care for it. Besides the Ultra Hand, though, I really do love Tears of the Kingdom. It's just that in the end, despite the excellent gameplay, the wonderful sense of exploration, the refinement to the visual style that Breath of the Wild started, and the musical design getting like perfected, and combat being a little bit more open because you have more stuff that you can use. It does feel like a step back in hindsight. Another Code Recollection is a really, really good reimagining of the DS and Wii Trace Memory / Another Code games. Ashley's story is much tighter. It's cohesive. She's a wonderful character. I love the art style. The music's great. I think that the gameplay is really interesting in how they handled these two kind of different playing games and incorporating them together. I think it's wonderful, and I want more people to play it. It went without much fanfare, and it makes me sad. All right, we are in the top 10, and Neva is number 10. It is Nomada Studios' second game on this list, following Grease, which is number 1, and is a fantastic action platformer with a lot of heart, a lot of emotion, and a lot of messaging about the environment and climate change, and just takes a lot of inspiration from Princess Mononoke and Nazca from Studio Ghibli, and uses it extremely well to create its own story about loss and grief and protection and living through difficulty. So Neva's a wonderful game. It may not be Grease, but it is a wonderful game that I am so happy to have gotten to play last year. Celeste, the indie darling of the Switch, one of the first games that came out that made that a system seller, and it deserves all the praise. It is a top to bottom excellent platformer that has incredible challenge if you want it, and a fairly gentle learning curve that really begins to amp up. But if you fail, the punishment's not that bad usually. But there's accessibility options. So if you just hit a wall and it's like, well, I'm getting into the story and I just want to play it for the story, you can do that. And I think that's wonderful. And more games have followed suit in that way, and I really appreciate it. Celeste has an incredible storyline, great characters, wonderful soundtrack, charming graphics that just really call back to generations past. It is just a lovely game all the way around. Untitled Goose Game. I have played through this twice in the last year, and it deserves to be right where it is. It may be short, it may be simple, but it is exquisitely designed. You are a goose, and you are there to cause mischief, and that is basically what you do through this game, is you cause mischief. You have a checklist, and you do check things off as you cause mischief. It's great as you go through each area, and you find new ways to cause said mischief, and your ultimate goal is to ruin a diorama and get a bell and bury it with all the other bells you've already stolen from these poor people. Plus, you can now play with 2 people, and playing with 2 people is a lot of fun. Unicorn Overlord is VanillaWare's homage to the Ogre Battle games from Quest that have not seen a new entry since Ogre Battle Gaiden, maybe on the Neo Geo Pocket, or 64. I'm not counting Tactics Ogre because they're 2 separate series within itself. Ogre Battle has a very deliberate means of moving around the map, and then you interact with things and get into battles on this big map. You feel like you are watching an entire army of characters sprawl out, and Unicorn Overlord takes that idea and applies VanillaWare's incredible graphics and animation, applies additional layers of complexity with tactics and weapon sets and gambits to set up order of operations basically for your character. and just wraps it all up in a fairly ho-hum story with pretty good characters, and just makes it the game of 2024 for me. It was just everything I was hoping it would be. It was. So if you are into strategy and tactical games, I highly recommend you check it out. Just be aware that you're going to not get a super grandiose story with it. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the best Smash game. It is arguably the best fighting game of all time. The roster is impossible to beat. The stage count is above 100. There's over 1,000 songs. There's single player and multiplayer content. Its biggest fault is that online still is not great. And I hope that whenever they do the next Smash, they figure that out a bit better. But you will just, if you like fighting games or like these characters, you'll probably have a good time with Smash Ultimate, because it's basically a love letter to each and every single franchise that appears in it. Spiritfarers, the 5th game on this list. It is a powerful, emotional roller coaster of a game. You are a young woman on a ship, and you are spiriting the souls of individuals to their final rest and trying to help them resolve lingering doubts, problems, regrets before they cross the gate. Wonderfully animated. It's got a great soundtrack. It plays really well, and it really just has incredible writing, and it pulls at your heartstrings every step of the way. Marvelous game. Easily worth being in the top 5. Splatoon 3. I could flip-flop between how I feel about 2 and 3, because 2 I think has the better single-player content and in some ways better maps. But 3 just has more weapons and more clothes and more abilities and feels better to play. And the single-player, not side order, is really good too. I wish I liked side order. I really don't like them applying roguelite stuff to Splatoon. I don't think it works. But it's also got all 3 games' music hiding inside of it, and like I just have a lot of good memories, and it's one of the only online multiplayer games I actually like playing. So Splatoon 3 deserves to be this high, even if I think that it is in some ways a step back from 2. It is the better game in the end, and I hope that Splatoon 4 takes lessons from 2 and 3, finds a nice happy medium. Metroid Dread. Did not expect Metroid Dread to be the second best Metroid game. I didn't expect Metroid Dread at all, to be honest. When it was announced, we were all waiting for Prime 4. And yet we've got a traditional 2D Metroid that is brilliant. It is great to play. It feels really good. It looks amazing. It's got probably the best responding Samus in the entire series. Its biggest flaw is its music kind of sucks. That's not a bad complaint to have in the grand scheme of things. But in terms of just gameplay and level design, it's really well done. And I really like it a lot. I also love Samus's armor in Dread. It is probably my favorite armor of hers. Fire Emblem Three Houses. What more could I say about this game that I haven't already said? It has the best characters in a role-playing game, period. Best voice acting in a video game, period. Some of the best character designs in a video game, period. It is everything that I think Fire Emblem should strive to be. It has great narrative threads outside of Dimitri's. I'm sorry, Blue Lions fans, you will never get me to understand why you love that boy so much. But Edelgard and Claude's stories are great. The school dynamic adds a lot of intrigue and opportunities to get to know characters. it's a great way to handle leveling up and getting stats and changing classes. Wandering around the monastery as a hub area is a brilliant idea. They tried it again with Engage and failed because they didn't make a captivating place. Garrick Mach is a captivating place. The tactical portion is not as good as Engage, but it's solid. And when you've got really great characters that you are getting increasingly attached to, you kind of don't think about that part as much. At least I don't. Best soundtrack in the series as well. I just love everything about Three Houses. It's my 5th favorite game of all time. So it's fitting that it's the 2nd best Switch game. And then we come to number 1, which is Grease. Nomada Studios' debut, and a game that healed me on a profound emotional level. I think that the puzzle platforming in Grease is backed by the most beautiful artwork, the most incredible score, and just incredibly well thought out level design that just makes the entire journey of going through grief palpable. Excellent use of color, excellent use of shadow as an antagonist. The internal struggles of going through a loss has never been represented in a video game better than with Grease. And it is my 4th favorite game of all time and my favorite Switch game that's ever been made. So there you go. Those are my 25 favorite Switch games if we include all the stuff, and then 25 Switch games that came out on the Switch. Before we wrap up, though, there's one other thing I do want to address, and I want to talk about a few compilations, but I kind of need to reset this back up to have compilations on here. So one sec. I feel like it would be unfair Three, two, one. Let's make this a little easier. Look, it's my face. Okay. I think it would be unfair to talk about the best games on the Switch without talking a little bit about some compilations. And so I've selected 8 compilations and 2 very loose compilations, mainly because you can't buy them as a compilation as an entirety. But I feel like these are great places to really explore a lot of interesting back catalogs of games that we haven't really had the opportunity to do on the scale that we have gotten on the Switch. So we'll start with Capcom. Capcom has been releasing a lot of fantastic compilations. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection is here representing generally their fighting compilations. So Fighting Collection 1, Fighting Collection 2 coming out this year. To a lesser extent, Street Fighter 30th. That was a bit of a misfire. Digital Eclipse did that one, and they kind of messed it up. Thankfully, they've gotten a lot better since then. But Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics is genuinely their best compilation, period. It brings together games that we never thought we'd see together at all, much less emulated as effectively as they are here. This is one of the best, most polished emulation wrappers that we've ever had with any game. And you can tell because Marvel vs. Capcom fans are devoted and they noticed little things being wrong, and they managed to nail Marvel vs. Capcom 2 like 99% of what makes it work, and that's incredible. And they're willing to patch things and fix other stuff or break things as it is. So easily any of the things that say Fighting Collection are worth picking up if you are remotely interested in the genre. The Ace Attorney games have all been re-released on the Switch. The first collection for Phoenix Wright Trilogy is the roughest, but beginning with Apollo Justice and The Great Ace Attorney and Miles Edgeworth Investigations. All of those are fantastic compilations that really took time, care, energy to updating the visuals, giving you lots of background material and museum content. The DLC is available when it was added, primarily to the 3DS games. They localized games that have never been localized before, the Great Ace Attorney games, as well as the second Miles Edgeworth Investigation. They learned their lesson from the original trilogy and just made everything else that followed fantastic. And then Capcom Arcade Stadium. The biggest flaw with this is that it's not online. But the fact that you get 2 different sets of 32 games that really dive deep into Capcom's back catalog of arcade games. It's really just missing the licensed stuff, the 3D stuff, and a few weird odds and ends. But on the whole, you're not going to get much better ways to experience the amazing breadth of Capcom's arcade output than with Arcade Stadium 1 and 2nd. I'm cheating because all 3 Castlevania collections are absolutely worth the investment. M2 killed it on all 3 of them. With the original, you get 8 games. The original NES trilogy, Super Castlevania 4, Castlevania Bloodlines, Castlevania The Adventure 1 and 2, and a localization of the Famicom Kid Dracula that we never had before. Plus, you get a whole bunch of fascinating development materials that we never had access to before. It's enlightening if you are a fan of the series. Advanced Collection puts the 3 GBA games together along with the Super Nintendo Dracula X as a nice little tease to everyone who wants Rondo of Blood, but we can't get it because Sony has it. But they've, again, added nice little quality of life features to all of the games, and you can play Aria of Sorrow, which is the best Castlevania game. And then Dominus Collection could be the one they've actually put in the most work, because they took the 3 DS games and made it work on a single screen and added a lot of really important quality of life features to all 3 games, especially Dawn of Sorrow that had horrible touchscreen implementation. They've done some workarounds to allow you to do seals with this analog stick instead of having to draw on the screen. I am so happy about that. They also made a new game. They remade Haunted Castle for some reason. But it's really good, apparently, in comparison to the original. So all 3 of them kind of deserve a spot on this list. And I was kind of impressed that I was able to find a graphic that incorporated all of it. M2 also handled the Contra Anniversary Collection, which has the arcade Contra and Super Contra, the NES Contra and Super C. It has Hardcore for the Genesis, Contra 3 for the Super Nintendo, and I want to say they have Operation C on there too for the Game Boy. I played it somehow. But again, M2 handled it, and they did a spectacular job. Again, development materials, quality of life features. It's one of the best ways to play all of those classic Contra games. However, I might have to say that in terms of the scope and content, out of Konami's options, the Cowabunga collection of Ninja Turtles games outdoes everything else. Arguably on this list, because not only do you get the arcade Ninja Turtles games, not only do you get the 3 Ninja Turtles games on the NES, Turtles in Time, and Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis, you also get Tournament Fighters for all 3 systems that it came out on. And all the Game Boy games too are there. I forgot those. So this is like an unparalleled glimpse into the height of Turtle Mania. And many of the games you can take online, and there's an extensive history and museum mode, as Digital Eclipse likes to do, just brimming with facts and information and concept art, and it's just a really wonderful look at what was arguably Konami's bread and butter, the way they made their money back in the 80s and early 90s. So it's like 2, 5, 8, 9, 10, 13, 11? I think there's 11 games on there. It's just an incredible amount of good stuff. So, highly recommend that if you are even remotely interested in beat-em-ups, action games, or fighting games, because Tournament Fighter Super Nintendo is secretly one of the better fighting games on that system. S&K, one of their big things that they started doing on the Switch was re-releasing Neo Geo Pocket Color games. And they've released 2 compilations of these, and that's probably the way to go. I ended up buying a few of them before I knew they were going to make a compilation, but I put Volume 1 here because you get a lot of the excellent fighting games for the system on this. You'll get Match of the Millennium, SNK vs. Capcom, you'll get Sam Show, you'll get Fatal Fury, you'll get King of Fighters, you'll get... I guess there's a Last Blade on there. Gal Fighters, along with a couple other games. It's all just superb all the way around. And then the second one has like Card Fighters Clash, which is like one of the best games on portables for a long time. Along with a bunch of more niche titles that are just worth bringing back. You also get like the Mega Man Pocket Fighter, or whatever they called that one. It's just cool. It's a really cool duo of 20-ish games. I think there's 10 on each. And it's great to just see them so lovingly brought back to life by Code Mystics. They did a fantastic job. Our last full compilation is Atari 50. This is Digital Eclipse's magnum opus so far. They've created a virtual documentary where you can go in and start at the beginning of a timeline and just read about games, read about the people who made them. There's interviews with several of the people involved. There's pictures, there's artwork, there's concepts, and then at key points you'll come to a game release, and then you can just jump into the game and play it for a little bit and then continue on the documentary. Really fascinating concept, and there's over 100 games on this compilation with 2 DLC sets added to it, adding games like Berserk, which Atari recently purchased the rights to Stern's catalog, and some of the Television Atari games. It's just an interesting look at a very important part of early video game history, and it's lovingly done. I can't say enough about it. Last but not least are these 2 little extra bits of really excellent content for older games. Sega Ages was another M2 series of titles that brought back Master System, Arcade, Genesis, and I think that's all of them. Titles with a lot of extra goodies. So I used Phantasy Star as an example because it's probably the defining Sega Ages game. It added a map, it added a lot of quality of life improvements to the general flow of the game. It takes what could probably be the best 8-bit RPG, which I still need to play, and makes it like the definitive way to play it. And that's what Sega Ages generally does with all of their releases. It's a shame the series ended when it did, but I have a feeling that Reiko Kodama's health may have had an impact on why the series ended a little prematurely. But in the end, there's so many of these that are worth picking up. I have Phantasy Star, Outrun, Shinobi, Space Harrier, Thunder Force AC, and Thunder Force 4. You can get 2 of the Sonic games. You can get Virtual Racing. You can get Columns. Puyo Puyo. There's just a lot of really important stuff on these Sega Ages titles, so I highly recommend checking them out if you have any interest. Oh, Herzog's Way, too, which also got some really good quality of life features added to it. And last but not least, the behemoth that is Arcade Archives. Hamster Corp has been chugging along with Arcade Archives since the launch of the Switch. They've released over 400 Arcade Archives, and I want to say around 100 Neo Geo games total. They're all like $8. Sometimes they go on sale for like $5. And they are just really well emulated, as close to the original arcade experience as possible, with enough quality of life features that just makes it worth picking up ones that you're interested in. And I've picked up probably a good 20 to 30 of them, maybe 40. There's also a few compilations of these. Taito has been re-releasing compilations of their games as Milestones 1, 2, and 3. And then Konami's Arcade Anniversary Collection is essentially 10 of the arcade games they've released through Hamster. And SNK has started to release Neo Geo versions, collecting their Neo Geo games. So there's a lot of ways to get into Arcade Archives, but if you really think about what they've done, I picked the Nintendo's Golf for a reason. They got Nintendo on board to release Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, Punch-Out, and a bunch of Versus System games, and Sky Skipper. It seems that relationship has ended, unfortunately, because there's still quite a bit of Nintendo's arcade legacy that is still buried. But, you know, I applaud them for at least getting Nintendo on board for a good 15 to 20 releases. Really impressive. And it says a lot about Hamster's quality that Nintendo was willing to partner with them for that, because they're very, very cautious. Alright, that is my personal definitive Switch list of the best games you can get on that thing. And with any luck, all of them should be backwards compatible with the Switch too, so you can still get an amazing treasure trove of games that will just make that system's library that much stronger right out the gate, which is lovely. It's nice not having to start from scratch. The next time we return to the Switch, Retrospective will be the last. It'll be the last episode, which is going to be a proper look at that system, its legacy, and thoughts on the future with the Switch 2, now that we have a sense of what it's about. So, we'll have a little interjection in between with some King of Fighters ranking. But we'll get this done in February, I'm going to guess. Alright, friends, thank you for joining me today. Have a wonderful day and take care.